Hello and welcome back to my series of the most underrated player from each decade. This decade is, of course, the 1990s. This one was very hard because the 1990s is one of the most well-recognized decades, and even the most like players that were very good. Like for the example, for the 80s, like Alice English isn't talked about enough, but for most of them. Most of the people, stars in the 90s, they're talked about a lot. But one of the people that are not talked about enough, in my opinion, is Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond was born on June 30th, 1965. He attended Moberly Area Community College Greyhounds before joining the Kansas State Wildcats. He also helped them get to the 1988 NCAA Division I basketball tournament regional NCAA Midwest regional final, and his 1,327 points are the most by a player in a 2-year career for the Kansas State history. He was drafted 5th overall in the 1988 NBA draft, after Kansas State, where he averaged 20 points a game. In his first season, he had a very good rookie season. He averaged 22 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was a very efficient shooting guard for his first season. 22 points a game on 47% shooting is very good for a shooting guard. And he made the playoffs, which was rare. Which would become a rarity in his career. He was eliminated by the Phoenix Suns in 5 games in his first season. He ended up winning the Rookie of the Year, though. In 1990, he improved by just 0.1 points. Again, he played almost 82 games, 78 games. Not very much to improve, as his rookie year was very good. Shot almost 50%, which is good for a shooting guard again. No other stats really stood out. He averaged 5 rebounds and 3 assists. 2.9, but I round up. But he did not make the playoffs. 1991, the TMC was just forming. Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, and Mitch Richmond. But sadly, it would never come to full duration, as all of them ended up leaving. But Mitch Richmond was the first one to leave. After averaging 24 points a game, which is very, very good. But somehow did not become an all-star. But the Run TMC finally, for the first time since his rookie season, they made the playoffs. They lost to Magic Johnson's Lakers, and they're close in 5 games in the Western Conference semifinals. In 1991, he was traded along with Les Jepsen in exchange for Billy Owens. He was a good player, but nothing really special. And it was a pretty weird trade, considering that he averaged 23 points a game in only his 3 seasons with the Golden State Warriors, and he was a young player. He was a trade that ended up costing the Warriors a ring or anything like that. Now, as he continued his good scoring, averaging 23 points a game, but the Kings were not that good and he did not make the playoffs. This would become a trend. In 1993, despite only playing 45 games and not even having one of his best seasons, he still ended up making the All-Star team for the first time. Keep in mind, he was still an efficient player, shooting over 45% on a good amount of shots. In 1994, he was also an All-Star once again, but for the first time, he was an All-NBA second-team player. Even though he didn't score as many points as he did in his, like for example, 1991, he didn't make any All-Star team, but he got more recognition as he got older. 23 points a game. His efficiency went down a little bit, under 45% at this point, but it still was very good. 1996 was the last year in his prime that he made the playoffs, but he got eliminated by the Seattle Supersonics in 4 games in the first round. He also made the All-NBA third team at this time. 1995, he also made the All-NBA second team. And in 1997, despite not ending up making the playoffs, he was an All-NBA player, and he averaged the most points while playing 81 games, almost 26 points a game, a decent efficiency for that volume. Again, he was not very good at anything else. For his career, he averaged 3.9 rebounds and 3.5 assists, but he was a very good scorer, efficient shooting guard. When you think of best shooting guards from the 90s, it's easy to forget him. Like people say that Michael Jordan had really, really bad shooting guards for his position, so he had really no competition. This is why he had so many All-NBA first teams. He never had good competition like Kobe and LeBron had way better competition at their positions, which is pretty true. But a lot of people forget, other than Reggie Miller, a lot of people forget that there was also Mitch Richmond, who was a very good player, but is forgotten. Anyways, in 97, he did not make the playoffs, but he was an All-NBA second-team player. 1998 was the last time he was an All-NBA player, and also last time he was an All-Star at all. After this, he started a decrease in games. He played 70 games. In the lockout season, he still was very good, but he moved to the Washington. He got traded to Washington Wizards in a big Chris Webber deal. Chris Webber went on to be one of the best players in Kings history, along with Otis Thorpe, who was old by that time. He still played decently well, but you could see that he started declining. In 2000, he averaged 17 points a game. Still decent, but nothing like he used to be. In 2001, he still averaged 16 points a game. But neither of these seasons, even though they had Michael Jordan for one of those seasons, he won anything. He finally won to the championship contender. Went to the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Barely played anything in the playoffs. Played two games in the playoffs off the bench. He got to dribble the ball out He scored 2 points in his last ever NBA game and finally got a ring against the New Jersey Nets in the sweep. He barely played. He barely got a ring, but a ring is a ring. He probably deserved it in his prime, but he didn't get a ring. Overall, he had his number retired by Kansas State and also the Kings, but he did not get his number retired despite Run TMC by the Warriors. Run TMC is what he's most known for, but his prime was probably with Sacramento. And he went to Wizards. He started not playing as many games, but he was still averaging over 10 points a game. But when he went to the Lakers, he was coming off the bench and he was no longer the same player. In his career, he was a consistent over 10 points from his rookie season all the way up until 2002 when he finally came off the bench. All this time, even when in 2001 he was a starter, but he became off the bench in 2002. With 21 points again, 46% from the field. It isn't like insane, but if you take when he was in from like 1997 to like his rookie year, for most of that he was a over 45% field goal shooter, which is pretty good. He took a decent amount of threes for his era. His highest was 6.4. Yeah, and from 1989 to 1997, which is a big sample size, he shot over 45%. 46% to be exact. It's just his later years that lowered it. He shot four 3-pointers during this time as well. Was a 40% shooter. And I'm not saying he was like Reggie Miller, but in his prime he was a 40% shooter on decent amount of attempts for his era. I'm not saying he was Reggie Miller or anything crazy, but he was a decent 3-point shooter for his time, even though his career thing isn't as good as it could be because his Lakers and Washington years, he was awful from the three. That lowered his thing. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling here, but that's the story of Mitch Richmond, my pick for the most underrated player of the 1990s. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.